Hey guys, it's Brick or Dylan here, and today is going to be something a little bit different. As some of you might know, I am pretty into writing. I've been writing since I was very young, and unfortunately that means that there is some embarrassing stuff out there, and I finally found an old fanfiction I've been looking for that I wrote about over 5 years ago, which I actually wasn't even that young. I was like 16, so that makes this a little more embarrassing. But I'm going to be reading it today for you guys. I don't know if I'm going to get through the whole thing. It may require 2 parts. We'll see. But let's get right into this. This ought to be interesting. Alright, so let's read my little summary here. Hello guys, Dylan here again. This is a Minecraft fanfiction I've been writing based on the simple question, if Minecraft came to real life, what would really happen? This story might have a slightly silly concept, but I can assure you, there is nothing silly about the story I've created. I will hopefully be adding a chapter a day, so please stay tuned. Well, that was a lie because I haven't added a chapter to this in, 6 years, 5 years. Also, keep in mind that the chapters will be fairly long, which that's decently accurate for a little fan fiction thing, I guess. Please enjoy. Blocked, Chapter 1, Breakthrough. And so, the man continued as he paced back and forth, talking in an obviously excited tone. This is what you all have been called here to see. He was standing in front of a large red curtain that was obviously covering some complex piece of machinery. The tension in the room grew as he slowly reached up to remove the cover and reveal the gaming breakthrough we had all come to see. We were in one of those weird buildings that companies can reserve for different occasions. I didn't know the word for it. We sat in a semicircle of chairs around the red curtain. There was a variety of people, the interested gamers, the game programmers and designers, and lastly, there were businessmen looking to see if this invention was a good investment choice for their companies. Those people, with their suits and snotty expressions, were dampening the moment for me. Ignoring them as best as I could, I sat on the edge of my seat, my mind numb with excitement. I already knew what was going to be behind that curtain, but hey, this was an exciting moment nonetheless. You see, the man up there on stage was Professor Jack Bronery, also known as my uncle. I had quite an insider's look at this advance in gaming technology for the past few months, and I actually had a part in helping with the presentation. Jack's hand clutched the curtain, and he pulled it down in one fluid, sweeping motion. The room immediately filled with the odd gasps of the audience, and the smug smirks were wiped right off the businessmen's faces. It was a tiny blue cube. Now, Jack began, an edge of triumph in his voice as he glanced around at the surprised faces in the audience. You might be asking yourself if this is a joke. I assure you, it isn't. He bent down and picked up the device. Its faces appeared to be completely blank until Jack rotated the cube in his hand. It had a small screen and a variety of buttons and controls, as well as a logo that read, Hollow Game. Very generic name. A large monitor that had also been hidden behind the curtain suddenly came to life as Jack operated the cube. The same logo appeared on the screen momentarily before it cut to another screen. With the Hollow Game, anyone can have a whole new kind of gaming experience. Jack continued with a 20-minute long speech about the device, with slides of pictures flashing on and off on the monitor behind him as he talked. Let me give you a basic rundown of what that little cube does. You can take anything from any video game, scan it with the Hollow Game, and create a lifelike hologram in the middle of your living room or kitchen, or whatever. Obviously, there aren't any video games to utilize this yet, and that's why both the investors and the game designers were practically frothing at the mouth when waiting their turn to ask questions. Now, Jack said, and a slightly more serious edge crept into his voice. The room that was buzzing with conversation was now dead silent. As you probably are all anxious to see, we are going to present an example of just what the Hollow Game can do. I stood up before I even received my cue. My nephew, Grant, why'd I choose that name, will be assisting me with this. Come on up, Grant. There was a small, awkward applause as I made my way up to the front of the room and stood by my uncle. I might have been going on 17, but as I stood proudly in front of that crowd, I felt like a little kid again. The crowd remained silent as Jack handed me the cube, and I began to enter a code into it, one I had easily memorized over the past few weeks. As I typed the last character of the code, a light projected from the cube and onto the monitor. It showed the outline of a strange, pixelated creature with green skin. Everyone in the room except the businessmen recognized it immediately as a creeper, often thought of as the mascot of Minecraft. I looked to Jack for confirmation, and when he nodded, I hit the scan button, and the room went wild with applause. Beside me, at level height with my head, a creature was beginning to emerge out of thin air. First a head, then a body, and then 4 insect-like feet. Standing 6 feet tall, the hologram creeper was truly a sight to see. I pushed a few more buttons on the Hollow Game, and it began to move back and forth, jump up and down, I guess, or hiss and sizzle as it would in the game before an explosion. The crowd loved it, so much so that they begged for another example. I looked at Jack. He shrugged and motioned for me to go ahead with it. We hadn't planned on showing more than just the creeper, but if this helped impress the audience, it was worth a shot. Oliver, come here. Hang on. I typed another code into the hologram and a 6-foot-tall pixelated skeleton appeared on the other side of me. This went on for another 10 minutes or so, me spawning monsters, making them dance and jump, and entertaining the crowd. I looked at the array of mobs in the room now, and I realized I was missing one. Might as well complete the collection, I said to another roar of applause, and I quickly entered a code into the cube. A tall, dark creature appeared on the monitor, an Enderman. I hit the confirmation button to scan, and the hologram began to materialize near me. But as the 9-foot-tall, long-armed creature came into clear view, something felt wrong. The Enderman just stood there, surveying everyone. The room had now become quiet again, but it was a different silence than before. It wasn't a tense, excited silence. It was a silence of fear. As I examined the giant, a shiver went down my spine. There was something about it that was just too real. Suddenly, the tall creature whipped its head around and stared at me, and I jumped. Its gaze held me there, in a sort of frightened daze. A daze I was forced out of seconds later when the Enderman glanced down and saw the box in my hands. It was like time had slowed down as the Enderman went completely insane. Its whole body seemed to vibrate and shake with some sort of otherworldly rage. The audience might have thought this was part of the act if they hadn't seen the look of pure terror on my face. The room was already filled with screams of terror when the Enderman suddenly vanished in a flash of purple. After a few moments of apparent calm, the yelling died down, and I looked at Jack for the first time since the disturbing event. I had been expecting a look of fear on his face, too. But more horrifying than the Enderman's rage, I saw nothing but emptiness in his eyes. Oh boy. I turned away from my uncle, and my mind began to work again. I started to shout a warning to the crowd. As a player of Minecraft, I knew the Enderman would be back in any second to attack. I'd been expecting that. I hadn't been expecting the creeper explosion. Alright, there's chapter 1. You know, we're gonna go ahead and read at least chapter 2 for this video, but we might have to put off 3 and 4. We'll see how it goes. Chapter 2. Betrayal. Wow, I wasn't very creative. The impact with the wall left me breathless and confused. I heard screams, but they sounded far off. It seemed as if they were part of some other world I was no longer a part of. But as an intense, aching pain ripped through my body, I felt the screams and loud noises were slowly becoming reality again. Not wanting to be in this mess, wanting to be anywhere but here, I reluctantly lifted my head up and opened my eyes. At first I could see nothing, my vision unfocused, but as I squinted and blinked, blurry objects began to come into view. There was something tall and black standing where I had been standing moments before the explosion. I could see a shape bolting towards the door, hoping to make an exit. Even as I lay there, mind confused and unfocused, I knew this man wouldn't make it. I heard the sounds of bones rattling, and when I saw the milky white outline, I knew the man was dead. I knew it before I heard the firing of a bow, before I saw him drop to the ground. And I just laid there for a time, watching these events unfold, because something in my mind hadn't yet realized that this was all reality. As I watched, there seemed to be more of these creatures entering the area, but I couldn't tell. My eyesight was having trouble focusing, almost as if my brain was protecting me from seeing what was going on. Suddenly, I felt a distant tug on my shirt, and the cold reality of the situation hit me like a brick. I could feel warm blood dripping down my forehead. My vision was no longer blurred. No longer was I protected from a sight that would haunt me for ages. As I was lifted in the arms of someone or something, I saw the sizzling crater where a creeper had exploded and sent me flying across the building. And I saw lifeless bodies sprawled out on the floor, the blood pools still growing. Jesus Christ. The creatures from the hologram multiplying at an alarming rate. My whole body retched violently and everything went black. When I awoke, the musty air immediately filled my nasal passage and I went into a coughing fit. My ribs throbbed in protest with every cough. As my senses began to work again, I could hear sounds like scraping on dirt or stone near me, but I didn't know what to think of them. I felt a bandage on my head, and when I reached up and touched it, a small trace of blood came off onto my hand. I noticed I was on a small bed with some sort of red sheeting. It wasn't very comfortable. I tried to roll over on my side, but immediately realized that's a bad idea, so I just laid on my back, staring up at the ceiling, which, I noticed, was made of stone. I did my best to maneuver my neck in such a way where my entire body wouldn't throb with pain, and I got a better look at my surroundings. I appeared to be in a small makeshift cave. Wooden support beams held it together in various places, aka I was in a mineshaft. There was a torch placed on the wall, causing a dim light across the area, and there seemed to be a little wooden chest in the corner of the room. My entire body was aching, and I gave up examining the cave. I laid my head back down on the pillow, and I was immediately gazing into two rectangular eyes. Hello. It took all of my self-control to not scream. My heart raced a million miles an hour, threatening to burst out of my chest and make a quick escape home. I was still on edge from the attack, which I had been slowly remembering over the past few moments. The person leaning over me was unlike any man in our world. Standing a modest 6 feet tall, his shape was blocky and rough, his head a complete square. But as I examined his light blue shirt and dark blue pants, I discovered this wasn't just any blocky man that had saved me. "Steve!" I gasped. He nodded. "Your ribs are bruised in multiple places," he explained. "Lucky you didn't break them." As another jolt of pain surged through my body, I didn't feel so lucky. "Let me get you something to eat," he offered. Steve walked over to the chest, and I noticed a crystalloid pickaxe in his hand. A diamond pickaxe. The strange thing about the tool was that it wasn't blocky and pixelated like him. It looked as real as any pickaxe with a diamond head would. Not that those exist. He opened the chest and withdrew a finely cooked poultry from it, and he sighed. Like the pickaxe, the chicken was no longer pixelated and silly looking, but on the contrary, it looked incredibly appetizing. He set the poultry down on a small table next to my bed. "Take what you want. I can't eat it," he muttered. As I tore off a chicken leg and ate hungrily, the hundreds of questions that had been floating at the back of my mind traveled to my throat and begged to be asked. I decided the most obvious one should be asked first. What happened? Steve sat down on the dirt floor and began to draw squares with his blocky hands, trying to decide how to explain it all, I guess. After a few minutes of this, he finally said something, although it really wasn't an answer. "You love playing Minecraft, Grant, don't you?" This was quite a simple statement, but it blew my mind. "How did you... wasn't this some kind of paradox?" Steve laughed. "You see, the way our worlds are connected is really quite odd. You guys can live our world through the fantasy game of Minecraft, which basically is how our world really is, and we can live your world by watching you as you play." I contemplated this for a second. "So every Minecraft account ever created is equal to the amount of people there are in your world?" Steve nodded. "Precisely. Our world is quite dependent on yours, actually." He looked at me with a curious expression, and inquired, "Have you figured out how I knew your name yet, Grant?" And I had figured it out. "You're my character." "Exactly," Steve said with a tone of conclusion. He stood up and began to work on clearing out the cave again with the same scraping and chinking sounds from earlier. I laid there, pondering about how this man had been who I was controlling all that time. When I realized there were so many more questions left to ask, I picked the second most obvious one next. But how exactly did the Enderman escape? And all the other mobs? Steve suddenly stopped mining. His blocky head dropped to the floor, drawing in breaths as if preparing to enter a battle, trying to compose himself. I really wasn't looking forward to explaining this to you. I was confused. "What?" "This was all planned out for months. I'm afraid you were simply a pawn in the whole thing," he sighed sorrowfully. "What are you talking about?" An edge of anger had crept into my voice, and I wasn't sure why. Steve wouldn't meet my gaze as he uttered the devastating words. "This is Jack Bronery's doing." Alright guys, let me know if you want me to finish this out. There are 2 chapters left, and actually if I remember correctly, it gets pretty crazy in the next 2 chapters. Not that I'm proud of it or anything, but this was kind of fun. I was looking for this for a while because I wanted to do a video on this, and I could not find it until now. So I'll see you guys next time.